Hey, everybody. I'm Alexis Badenmare. I'm with the Organic Consumers Association, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Gretchen DeVoe with the Alliance for Natural Health. Gretchen, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this issue and to reconnect with you. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, so this is really fun. I was just looking at your bio, and I always knew you were a lawyer, but I didn't realize that you also had a degree in natural health. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, that was a master's degree in applied healing arts. So it was more of a philosophy degree, the underlying sort of philosophy behind different traditional approaches to natural health and healing. It was more of a spiritual side and sort of like some indigenous cultures and things like that. So it was very enriching and gave me a lovely perspective in terms of the work that I do.
Yeah, that's really cool. Did you do that after or before your law degree?
I did that after my law degree. I was doing environmental work on Capitol Hill, and then
Mhm.
I wanted to do that in concert because I was really interested in natural health and healing and really combining the natural health with the environmental work that I was doing because they're so totally interconnected.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very good. So you've been at the Alliance for Natural Health since 2008, is that right?
Yes,
A little while now. Very good. And
I'm
you
glad while you're having fun.
That's right. Well, you all have fought this fight for a long time. We're going to talk about vitamins and supplements and the perennial attacks from the FDA, from Congress, from Big Pharma. How has this issue changed since you first started at the Alliance for Natural Health in 2008?
That's a really good question. I would say, in a sense, it hasn't changed at all because it's
Mm,
the same plan that's been in place since the early 1990s.
mm.
But things have really escalated on both sides in terms of, I would say, the education and awareness of the masses, and then also equally the pushback from pharma, big pharma, and government as well. It might be helpful if I gave a little bit of background, kind of the main issues we're working on, where those have their roots.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to learn this history. I don't know it.
So, in the early 1990s, the EU and the United States came together, different powers that be, working with Big Pharma, and decided to put in place a framework that would essentially eliminate access not only to information about natural health and healing, but access to most supplements and the different high dose and really good ingredient combinations that we use to stay healthy, to manage chronic illness, and just to maintain optimal health. And this happened in the early 1990s. What's interesting is the EU was successful, the US was not. What I mean by that is DSHEA passed in 1994. I think you're aware of Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. That was the culmination of this. When these issues arose, the public got really involved in the US and pushed back and said, no, you can't take our supplements. And we had some champions on the Hill, Senators Hatch and Harkin, and it was a really big to do. You even had Mel Gibson doing PSAs. I mean, everybody got involved. And the result of that was that Congress said dietary supplements are to be regulated as food and not drugs. But that didn't really happen in the EU. The EU, the powers that be that are working on this sort of framework, were successful. And so you can see today what's happened in the EU and where we are in the US. So the EU went along this trajectory, and these things take a long time. As you know, policy takes decades. But where they are today, you have many countries within the EU have eliminated access to high dose supplements. For example, you really can't find more than 1,000 IUs of vitamin D anywhere. They're limiting magnesium. They limit magnesium in all forms because they look at magnesium oxide, which is one form that has a tendency to create side effects of loose stools. So they look at the most, I guess, sensitive supplement version that can cause more side effects in individuals and use that to regulate all versions of that supplement. Because of that, they eliminate access to magnesium glycinate, which we use to, sleep and help maintain good magnesium levels all the time, to really low levels. So, and in addition, they've also limited what you can say about supplements. There's incredible censorship over in Europe. And this is a continuing process. They're not done, but we can see what's happening in many different countries within the EU. So that's that's the goal. That's the end goal. In the US, we did have DSHEA, and that was a huge blow for big pharma and the powers that be. So, since the early 1990s, they've been trying to kind of find a way to reverse this. And that's where you come in with current efforts from the FDA and Senator Durbin that we're working on and have been working on since 2011. So I can continue if it's helpful to kind of, but it's a lot of information, in terms of kind of where things stand now. But it's just interesting because although supplements are definitely threatened and there are huge issues with censorship in the United States, we do enjoy more access than anyone else in the entire world. And people don't realize that it's a gift, it's not a given, and it's not necessarily going to last forever if people don't wake up and get involved, because the FDA and Durbin are both very close to putting in place that same framework. If they're successful, if Durbin is successful, and if the FDA is successful with actions that they're trying to complete this year, then we're kind of in that 1990 stage that the EU was in, putting in place the framework for them to then start doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's a little disturbing. So you mentioned DSHEA. Tell us again what that acronym stands for, and when that happened, and what was good about that, and what was not so good. And it wasn't perfect, right? It has enabled us to have access to supplements, but people can't say what supplements are actually good for. Is that also part of DSHEA?
Right. So that's the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. And I think the huge win for us was that Congress said supplements are to be regulated as food and not drugs. And that's really important because drugs, those are new to nature chemical entities that have a certain type of patent protection, and they receive market exclusivity because of that. And then they also have, some different hurdles they have to go through in terms of the approval process. They spend hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. So Congress said that framework is not supposed to apply to supplements. Makes sense because these are natural dietary ingredients. There is no market exclusivity. They are not new to nature. We have decades, if not hundreds of years of use. So we have historical data and know that they're safe. And therefore, it's just a different procedural and policy approach in terms of regulating them, which is important because supplement companies can't afford to spend hundreds of millions of dollars or billions, right? So that's really key. I think in terms of where we came up a little short, and you're referring to what claims can be made. DSHEA did say that you can make a structural function claim. So you should be allowed to say a supplement promotes cardiovascular health or protects immunity. You should be able to say something related to the structure or function of the body and how the dietary ingredient impacts that. However, you can't talk about the fact that there are hundreds of studies on vitamin D, for example, that show that it does benefit the immune system more than just generally, right? It prevents and treats the flu and COVID. And I mean, there's all sorts of enormous amounts of data in terms of what supplements actually do. How magnesium really benefits the cardiovascular system with more specificity, how chromium can actually treat diabetes, type 2 diabetes, just as well, if not better than metformin. You can't say that, it's illegal. So that is, that's unfortunate. We actually have separately been working on a Free Speech About Science Act, which would allow companies to cite peer-reviewed science. So you could tell people what the science says, which seems like that's a no-brainer. It's free speech.
Well, I just noticed that Tim Ryan, your colleague, is in the chat with us on Facebook, and he put a link to savesupplements.com. So that's where people can go and take action. We haven't really talked about what's happening in Congress yet, and I do want to do a little bit more background with you, but just wanted to say hi to Tim there. So Gretchen, you were talking about how, okay, what triggered my thought was I was just looking on your website, lots of interesting news items there, and you had a story about a New York Times article that was very misleading about what supplements can do and what they can't do based on this, structure function versus actually being useful to treat health conditions. Do you want to talk a little bit about that New York Times article? That was really fascinating.
Well, I think it's one article, but it demonstrates what we see on a daily basis, right? I think it was a series of maybe 15 or 20 questions to see, you could test your knowledge about supplements, and there were questions like, true or false, vitamin D can help to treat infection, or true or false, vitamin C can help treat the common cold. And the New York Times answer to both of those questions is no. The answer would be false, right? Because you can't say that. But there's so many studies, an enormous amount of data showing that, of course, vitamin C helps treat the common cold. The body can't make vitamin C. And when the body has an infection, the body needs enormous amounts of vitamin C to help to defend the body. I mean, there's just so much data on this and so many studies on the vitamin D too. And they had other similar questions. But the point is, because of this law, you can't say it, but it's misleading, it's lying. It's absolutely it's false. And so the public reading this says, oh, well, vitamin D doesn't help. Vitamin C, those things don't help. It doesn't matter. And that's just not the truth.
Yeah, that's really annoying. I wonder why the New York Times well, they're helping out Dick Durbin. So there's a senator who has been the nemesis of the natural health movement for a long time. This is not the first time I've seen an Alliance for Natural Health alert that told us about something that Senator Dick Durbin was up to. So well, maybe you should tell us a little bit of the history. Like, why is Dick Durbin like so obsessed with vitamin C and vitamin D and restricting people's access to these necessary dietary supplements?
Well, I can't say that I know definitively what his reasons are. I think that he would publicly say that a close friend, or maybe family member had a health related problem that he attributed to potentially taking a supplement. I think that he's got some sort of story along those lines. I don't know the veracity of that, and I don't know what the other reasons might be. But he has been absolutely on a crusade since 2011. And that was the first year that he introduced his mandatory product labeling legislation. That bill sounds innocuous because it would just require that all supplement companies provide certain data to the FDA, including a list of ingredients in their products. And the original version of his legislation also required the Institute of Medicine, which is now the National Academies of Sciences, to evaluate every dietary ingredient submitted to the FDA and determine whether or not those were dangerous. If so, to require a warning label. Now, the Institute of Medicine, around that same time, for example, came out with a report saying that vitamin D over 4,000 units a day is dangerous, which, if you know anything about vitamin D, many physicians, every physician I know, hundreds, would recommend oftentimes as much as 5,000 units a day just to maintain health in the winter months. And that should be pursuant to a blood test, and it's on a personal, basis. But saying that anything above 4,000 units is dangerous and would require a warning label is ridiculous. And that's, of course, only one step away from eliminating access altogether. If you're talking about like black box warnings on vitamin D. So this is 2011. Now, within a couple of months of him introducing this legislation, the FDA also introduced their new dietary ingredient guidance document. And this is actually part of DSHEA. Congress did say FDA needs to determine a process for supplements that come into the market after 1994, the year DSHEA passed, in terms of notifying the FDA about the presence of these new dietary ingredients. So FDA in 2011, same time as Durbin's introduction, introduced their version of the guidance document, which actually essentially requires supplement companies that either entered the market after 1994 or even if it's a new formulation. So we had vitamin D before 1994, but not liposomal vitamin D, or even just new manufacturing processes. Really simple changes can trigger this. FDA says that these companies essentially have to follow a new drug approval process, which I spoke to, just a little bit ago, how that's inappropriate, impractical, and really almost impossible for many supplement companies. So it's really a way to eliminate these supplements. So this is a way of contravening congressional intent, what FDA is doing. Now, Congress didn't give the FDA this authority. So it's sort of coupled with Durbin's bill and the current version that's pending in the Senate, which gives FDA additional authority to then look at NDIs, companies that have products that would be considered an NDI that haven't complied with this process, and pull them from the marketplace. So the two work together.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So what's happening now? There is a bill that you all oppose, but that may not be what actually happens. They might want to sneak in language into another piece of legislation that they know has to pass on a certain date. So it's crazy that you've been fighting this same fight for a decade, like specifically these same things. All right. But I've been reading your alerts, and it seems that this time it really seems like it's very, very close. Like the power that they have to pass this seems imminent.
It's very scary. And yes, we've beat Durbin back 4 times. He's known for sneaking things in at the last minute and by amendment. We stopped an amendment 48 hours before passage several years ago. But this time is very scary because you have Senator Patty Murphy, who is the chair of the Help Committee in the Senate. That's the Committee of Jurisdiction. She wants it too. So she put a version of Durbin's legislation into the prescription drug user fee bill. This is the bill that it's reauthorized every 5 years. It must pass. There's no way it won't pass. It needs to pass by the end of September because this is the bill that basically gives FDA authority to receive user fees from drug companies. Drug companies provide FDA between 40 and 60% of their operating budget. So what people don't realize is that FDA is basically working for the pharmaceutical companies. They're beholden to them. We've had whistleblowers historically have attested to this fact.
Wow. I had always heard that figure, but I didn't understand where it came from. So it came from this legislation that's getting reauthorized. Wow, that's really interesting.
Yes. And so you have a drug bill, a drug user fee bill, that she's put language regarding supplements in. Supplements should not be lumped in with drugs. They're different. I mean, you cannot legislate them the same way. So, but Patty Murray did put this language into her drug user fee bill. It passed her committee jurisdiction. So this is in the Senate bill. Now, procedurally, it has to be passed on the floor of the Senate as well. And you have to have matching bills in the House and the Senate. The House did not include this language in their bill, which has passed completely out of the House. So what we have now is a bill that is very controversial. There's an enormous amount of pushback because of this provision. So the Senate will decide what bill that they're going to pass on the floor. They have to also pass a user fee bill. And then if it still includes this mandatory product listing language, there'll be a group of individuals from the committees of jurisdiction from both the House and the Senate. They'll come to a conference and they'll come up with language that may or may not have this language in it. And then both have to pass it. Bills have to match. So it's down to the wire. This bill has to pass by the end of September. One way or another, it's either going to have this language or not. Right now, the language is in one version that has passed out of the major committee. So it has part of the individuals.
Yeah, a lot of times these things come down to the conference committees, which are a non-transparent process. The members of the committee are selected by leadership to serve on the committee, and I would hate for it to get to that point, but we're not there yet, right? So we still have a really good opportunity to weigh in with our legislators.
That's right. Absolutely. It's so important. This is how DSHEA passed in the early 90s. This is why we're not where the EU is today, because enough people got involved and realized that the threat was severe. And that's what we need again. We need millions of Americans emailing their legislators, calling their legislators, and really making a big stink about this, sharing the alert with their friends and family, and getting involved, because people don't realize what's at stake. Again, it's a gift, not a given, and people take it for granted. Everyone I know has something that they require, some dietary ingredient that supports them and helps them and is very safe. And we don't realize that these things could all disappear.
So, you did talk about Patty Murray, how she's become, she's taken this on and she put it into this legislation that's a must-pass piece of legislation, a reauthorization. Has she always been with Senator Durbin on this, or is her involvement new?
To my knowledge, this is new. This
Okay.
is several months old. This is new. But we also had Biden put in a request for funding this year. He wanted to fund this effort. You also have FDA
Hmm.
speaking out. You have a major coordinated effort speaking out and seeking funding for this, passage of this. They're treating it as though it's like a national crisis. Like we've got to have this information about supplements. And what's interesting is there are no dead bodies. There are no
Yeah.
dead bodies. There are no people getting sick or dying or having major problems from taking dietary ingredients. So there's no poster child like people are dying, children are dying. We have to do something about this now. There's no crisis. There's nothing wrong. There are so many crises going on in the world today. This is not one of them. There should be no effort on this. But it's very peculiar that all of these very, very powerful individuals are lining up and saying, this is our agenda. Why? You have to ask yourself, why? And I've been at this long enough. Every time it's Big Pharma standing behind. You mentioned the New York Times covering this story. Who do you think their major advertising dollars come from? That's the thing, is Big Pharma has enormous power through their campaign contributions, their advertising dollars. They essentially rule in many realms, and it's up to us to stop them, to take control over our health freedom.
Yeah, definitely. This is urgent. So, what is the website again that we can go to? Savesupplements.com?
SaveSupplements.com.
Okay. All right. Well, don't wait. You can do this and listen at the same time. You can, fill out the form and send your email real quick. And then after our conversation, you can call up the offices. I've noticed that since the the shutdowns essentially, um, members of Congress and their staff, they don't answer the phone as much as they used to. And you have to leave messages on an answering machine. Like, that's brand new in terms of my experience with, advocating for issues with members of Congress. Yeah, it's kind of tough times reaching out to folks, but you still get the emails back. So one of our Facebook participants here, Jennifer, she says, Durbin is one of my senators. Unfortunately, I wrote to him. He doesn't care what the constituents want. He's in Big Pharma's pocket. He says, thank you for contacting me about the Dietary Supplement Listing Act of 2022. I appreciate hearing from you. In 1994, Congress passed the Dietary Supplement Health Education DSHEA Act, which provided the Food and Drug Administration the authority. And so you get like a form letter. So emails are really good, and you can send a very quick email from savesupplements.com, but it's more impactful to, call up and leave a message on their answering machine if you don't get okay, I'm seeing another note here. There is no website at this link.
SaveSupplements.com. I just checked it myself.
Oh, somebody put in the wrong link. Okay, so you all misheard me. It's SAVE, savesupplements.com. And somebody must have misheard me and thought it was safesupplements.com. It's SAVE, save supplements. So don't wait. Do that while we're talking. And then after this conversation, call up. If you don't get a real live human being to speak to, leave a message on the answering machine and make sure that your congresspeople hear from you directly. So it's hard. I mean, I understand this issue now because I've been following the Alliance for Natural Health for a very long time. But honestly, Gretchen, when I first heard about this, it was kind of hard for me to get exercised about it. I mean, I didn't we've had some situations very recently where it looked like some supplements might be taken off the shelves, and it was like kind of at that point that it just hit me like, oh yeah, like they actually really could do these things. And they're setting up a framework that seems innocuous. Like, well, they just want to register everything, right? The FDA just wants to know what's out there. And supposedly they're doing it, like you said, Senator Durbin says that he had a friend who was harmed by supplements and he can pull out situations, apparently he's been talking about illegal supplements, supplements that the FDA currently considers illegal. And he's saying that's why the traffic in these illegal supplements is why we need this new registry for supplement producers, as if the people trafficking in the illegal supplements would say, oh yeah, over here, I'm selling the illegal supplements. So how does, Gretchen, what do you say to this? And how does he get away with making such silly claims?
People don't ask enough questions. It's a common sense test, right? I mean, yes, exactly what you said. These supplements are already illegal. A bad actor is not going to say, I better comply with the law because if I don't, my supplement's going to be misbranded, even though it's already misbranded. But I don't want that to happen. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely illogical, but people don't push back. And I think, this is what's unfortunate is it's all sound bites these days. It's all fear-based and it's sound bites, and people don't delve a little bit deeper. I do want to, respond to something you said, that you hear, oh, supplements are going to disappear, but then they don't. And so you kind of like lose interest, like, well, maybe that's not really a thing. Maybe that's not really a problem. And I've got other things to worry about. Well, I want to say that I personally am always very cognizant, like, does it sound like the sky is falling again? But it really, the threats keep happening and then we push back. So CBD, for example, the FDA came out a couple of years ago and said CBD oil is illegal. It's an illegal drug being sold as a supplement. And that relates to this whole notification FDA process that I went over, because the company selling CBD oil did not comply with this draft notification process, which hasn't been completed yet. It's supposed to be completed this year, right? FDA and Durbin are trying to complete everything this year. But the companies didn't necessarily complete all of the notification requirements because there are a lot of reasons why. And this speaks to the problem with the notification process itself. But because of that, a drug company came out with a drug that was approved. And because there's now a drug version of CBD oil, FDA said a couple of years ago, CBD is illegal. You can't sell it as a supplement. However, they didn't enforce. So it is illegal. But it's still being sold. So people don't, well, what, it's not really at risk, right? Because I just bought it at my health food store. Well, that's because FDA needs the additional list that Durbin's creating of everybody selling it, as well as the additional authorization that this drug user fee bill would give them. See, Congress, they foresaw this. This is not supposed to be happening. So they need this additional authority and this Durbin piece to then sweep the market of CBD oil. Had this bill passed 2 years ago, when FDA said CBD oil is illegal, it would have disappeared. Now, the fact that it's still in the market has given a lot of people in different groups the ability to get together and create an enormous pushback. And there's a lot happening politically. They may be able to save it. I'm saying maybe, because it's not a done deal by any means. But that's an example. I can give you others, but yes, it sounds like there's always something at risk, but it's still available. But that's because these other pieces are still missing, and they've been trying to do it for 10 years.
Gretchen, I want to take everybody to the Action website. I'm going to share my screen. So keep talking for a moment, and I want to show everybody where they can take action.
Sure. I'll mention NAC.
Yeah.
N-acetylcysteine is another supplement that is tremendously beneficial for many things. It helps the body make glutathione, which is the body's main antioxidant. It's what we all need to survive and thrive in today's environment, which is laden with toxic chemicals and pesticides and exposures and dirty air and dirty water. We need glutathione to stay healthy. And NAC actually was recommended by many, many medical doctors to take as part of your personal protective kit when COVID was really, when the numbers were really, really high. So NAC, very beneficial. However, during COVID, when FDA had a lot of other, fish to fry, they came out and said, well, we're going to pull NAC. We're going to say NAC is, again, it's an illegal supplement. It's an illegal drug being sold as a supplement. So procedurally, the rationale is a little bit different, but FDA decided to go after NAC. Again, you can still buy it because they haven't pulled the trigger. And that's because of the enormous pushback, and because we're pushing back really hard, not only on the congressional level and policy level, but in the courts. I mean, there's just different things are happening, and I hope that we can save NAC. But it's another example that this Durbin piece would give them what they need to completely pull NAC, and they would have taken it immediately during COVID when everybody was especially needing it.
Yeah.
So again, I can give you other examples, but key supplements that we need. We actually had an economic analysis done when this first came out and showed that we'd lose access to over 33,000 supplements if
Whoa.
the FDA completed its notification process. And then Durbin, of course, is giving he's like the enabler. He's like completing the package with the authority piece.
All right, so I've got my screen now. Okay, so when you go to save, SAVE, supplements.com, it redirects to the Action Center for the Alliance for Natural Health, and you'll come right here. So we've got our alert. It's about opposing the so-called mandatory filing for supplements. A well-organized, coordinated campaign from the FDA and Big Pharma is threatening access to supplements you depend on. Using the false premise that supplements are unsafe, the FDA is working to gain more power over the regulation of supplements in order to further solidify Big Pharma's monopoly over medicine. These efforts must be opposed. Write to Congress and tell them to oppose the efforts to establish a mandatory filing for supplements. And then you can see that your message will go to President Biden, your 2 US senators, and your US representative. And you can edit this, but there's a letter that's pre-written in the box here. And then when you put in your information, it gets sent to your Congress critters. And usually you'll get a note back. You'll get a letter in the mail, or you'll get an email back from your member of Congress, and they can let you know. So Gretchen, do we have champions who are trying to stop what Durbin and Murray are putting forward now?
Senators Hatch and Harkin, who are neither of whom are in the Senate any longer, were really our strongest champions, and they're the reason that and others as well, but they're the reason that DSHEA passed, and the reason that we've enjoyed so much access for so long. There are others that want to be helpful. Chaffetz was in the House for a bit, and he wanted to champion supplements, but he's no longer in the House. Mike Lee, he is really, really helpful with supplements, and he's kind of stepped into that place of the Senator Hatch and Harkin and is doing his best. But he doesn't have as much power at this point. We don't have a lot of other really strong champions. You have those in Congress who get it, but they're not willing to go out there on the floor and really, really, when the rubber hits the road, be change makers. So we're still cultivating that support in Congress. And I think that's one of the reasons it's been so challenging.
Yeah, and that's even more reason for us to make those calls, send the emails. Members of Congress are running for office now. Every single member of the House of Representatives has to run every 2 years on the same schedule. That's a lot of, it's like they're trying to get media attention. They're trying to get in the newspaper. They're sending people to your house to talk to you. Now's the time. This is, they're doing this in an election year. Obviously, they're doing it for campaign contributions from Big Pharma, but they need our votes. And this is when your member of Congress is most likely to be making in-person appearances in the home district. This is the time when they really have to pay attention to you. So in that sense, we have the upper hand.
Yes. And I would say I think another challenge really relates to this issue of censorship, especially through the last several years with COVID. You've had, again, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of medical doctors who have come out and said, we're on the front lines. We're seeing that different dietary ingredients are helpful in treating and helping people stay healthy during this time. And there was a huge pushback. There was enormous amount of censorship. And you had the CDC and others coming forward and saying, this is misinformation. It's misinformation because, of course, these are not drugs proven to treat COVID. And this, again, all relates back to this process of whether or not it's a supplement or a drug and the claims that you can make. And so I think that the enormity of the censorship and this sort of stigma attached to access to supplements and information, and it's like, we need to protect people from these supplements and kind of, I think that that's kind of impacted this as well. There's all of a sudden this like negative connotation with supplements. It's like people are talking about them and they're going to the store and just buying this vitamin C and God knows what they're going to do with it. It's so ridiculous. But and when you have enough media outlets and different authority figures and organizations that have this type of authority parroting the same message, then that then creates the groundwork for these kinds of things to gain steam.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. And like we were talking about before, the Dick Durbins of the world aren't going to come and say, we're coming after your high dose vitamin D. We're coming after your high dose vitamin C, or even mention something like vitamin C or vitamin D when they do this. They'll take an exotic, illegal supplement and claim that that's what they're trying to regulate. But Gretchen, the FDA already has ways to regulate the supplements that actually are dangerous and actually are illegal. So can you explain that too? Because I think usually my reaction is like, oh, regulation of industry, that's got to be good. It's like, gosh, I'm so glad that Congress is doing something. And then it doesn't really occur to me that, oh yeah, they should be going after Big Pharma and regulating the truly dangerous drugs. But even in this field, like FDA has the power to regulate bad supplements, and yet they're not doing it. And they're trying to get this power to have more control over good supplements. So how does that all work?
Well, and that is a really good point. We constantly hear, well, supplements are unregulated. It's the wild, wide west, the wild, wild west, right? They're unregulated, unregulated, unregulated is the soundbite that you keep hearing. Well, that's not true. Supplement companies are required to comply with good manufacturing processes. Those are created. They have very high standards. The FDA on a regular basis is supposed to inspect dietary supplement company manufacturing plants. They are required to comply with the rules regarding what they can and can't say. They can make the structure function claims. They can't make other claims unless they have a qualified health claim or they achieve through the proper procedural process. If they can acquire a health claim, then they can make that statement. So there are all of these different rules. I mean, FDA absolutely regulates supplement companies, but I think that the people would say, well, the FDA doesn't test them. FDA doesn't test supplements. FDA doesn't test drugs either. FDA doesn't test anything.
Or foods like GMOs. I mean, yeah.
No. Don't get me started on GMOs. No, FDA doesn't test anything. But people think, oh, well, it's the supplements because FDA is not testing them and regulating them. It's absolutely not true. Companies are required to have various studies on file that support any structure function claims that they do make. Just as drug companies, they do their own data, they do their own testing, and they cherry pick and give the FDA whatever data they want, and then they pay the FDA to approve their drugs. And then there's no aftermarket monitoring. If anything, I think it's a wild, wild west of drugs because of the way that they're used so ubiquitously in our country.
Yeah. And what about the examples that Durbin has trotted out, like the illegal drugs? Like, shouldn't the FDA be going after them? And why do you have things that aren't FDA allowed supplements on the market still, or even being sold in stores? Why isn't FDA cracking down on that?
That's a really good question, why they aren't cracking down more. And, for a long time after DSHEA passed, it was rumored, and there was a lot of facts to back it up, that certain individuals within the FDA weren't enforcing because they wanted to see bad examples, because that gives them then the data that they need to say we need to go after supplements. So that may be part of it. They're looking, there is no poster child. They need the poster child. But yes, there are bad actors in every industry, and the supplement industry is no different. I mean, we, Alliance for Natural Health, we represent the entire natural health community, but a majority are their patients and individuals and, folks in the medical field. Like, we are not a trade group. We are not, um, we don't represent supplement companies. We represent the people that need access to these products. So I'm not a talking head for supplement companies by any means. And I'm the first one to say that there are bad actors out there. And you've seen these infomercials like late at night, or I guess 24 hours a day now on certain channels. It's like, call this number, get our special supplement, and you'll lose 30 pounds in 30 days. I mean, supplements don't do that. That's spiked. That's spiked with some sort of drug. That's illegal. And people need to be discerning in that regard. FDA should be enforcing, and they're not. But the other thing I'll say is people need to be more discerning. We actually have a list of recommended supplement companies and products. There's an article that we've updated every couple of years. There are very, very reputable companies out there. I mean, basically, I would say any supplement that you could buy at a health food store, like at Whole Foods or Sprouts or Natural Grocers, for the most part, is going to be a good product. And these are good people. These are good companies. A lot of them are family owned. They've been doing it for a long time. Many started the product line because they had a wife that had this disease, or a husband that had that disease, and so they really get into the research. These are passionate individuals. They're good products, so you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, that's so important. It hadn't occurred to me that FDA was deliberately not enforcing this so that they would have bad actors that they could use as a pretense for going after a good industry that competes with big pharma. But I'm afraid to say that sounds extremely logical. And yeah, that's probably what's up. Well, okay, so there have been a couple of questions, and I think it might be useful for people to have these questions answered. So one was, well, we're talking about CBD oil, but what about hemp oil? And why is CBD oil treated differently from hemp oil? So we're talking hemp seed oil versus a hemp flower extract. That's as much as I know. But how are they regulated differently?
So that's a really good question, because CBD is a constituent of hemp, and I can't speak to a seed versus a flower versus different parts of the hemp plant. What I do know is that there have been attempts since FDA said that CBD oil is illegal. Other entities have filed notifications with the FDA regarding hemp, and FDA declined and indicated that CBD is illegal. Basically, the FDA has indicated that hemp is also illegal because it contains CBD. So again,
Wow.
this is still playing out, but initially we didn't know. We had no idea how will this impact hemp, but FDA has indicated that it relates to hemp too. And in what forms? If it's just the hemp oil, or obviously there's hemp hearts, and I think that that's different. That's a food that doesn't have if it doesn't have CBD oil in it. But this is all a very gray area. It's unclear.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big slippery slope. And it's very interesting. I really, honestly, I just didn't understand this before talking to you. And now the pieces are coming together. And I guess you've probably learned gradually how they planned to roll this out. It probably didn't all make sense 10 years ago, but now you see the pattern. Do you want to speak to that at all, about how you've had an evolving understanding of how how the government plans to destroy the supplement industry?
Well, what I would say is it's much broader than just the supplement industry. We work on pretty much every different area of natural health in terms of not only modalities but access like to information. It's everything under the natural health umbrella. We want people empowered and have to have access. So it's everything. And what I would say is when I joined in 2008, FDA was going after bioidentical hormones. These are compounded, individualized hormones, oftentimes used for women going through menopause. They want the bioidentical, the more natural estriol instead of the synthetic pharmaceutical versions that have been linked to cancer, for example. So this is a health freedom issue. Can you access what it is that you want to put in your body? Was working on that in 2008, and issues like this. And there's the homeopathy. There's all these different things. It's sort of like whack-a-mole. It's like, boy, they're going after that competes with drug companies, right? Because if women are using compounded estriol instead of lining the pockets of big pharma, I mean, think about how many women use drugs during menopause. It's millions and millions. The number is huge. Or homeopathy, all of these different things that people use, including supplements. And so it's very much whack-a-mole. And it kind of has to be in a certain sense because they're different mechanisms, right? It's procedurally through the FDA, or FTC is going after specific claims. It's within compounding pharmacies. There's this whole other process that, in that regard that we can talk about another time. But, sort of seeing all these different things happening. And then, you put it together. And I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I never have been. And out of the doubt, believe in the reasonableness and honesty of individuals, and you want to believe in us. But after so many different times and examples, whether it's supplements or other modalities that compete with big pharma that enable us to stay healthy naturally, you see the same players involved and these illogical things, right? Durbin's talking about something that doesn't make any sense. It's an illegal drug. Why would you have to do something to the entire supplement industry? Like, when you really dig in and you see this over and over again, you put it together and it's like, wow, and you look at follow the money, right? And that's true with everything. So yeah, we put it together pretty early on, but I still wanted to believe that I was wrong because it's honestly, it's scary. You're talking about the ability of, my friends and family, all of us to stay healthy, not to succumb to, illness and disease and all of these awful things, and then end up popping all these pills that then cause other side effects. And we can talk about that too, whether drugs even work. Those are issues, but they're trying to eliminate access to options. And the bottom line is health freedom. It's a freedom issue. So yeah, kind of put it all together. And I guess, yeah, early on, you see that it's all connected. It's part of a bigger push.
Yeah, clearly. One of the things you mentioned related to another comment in the chat about synthetics. So not all dietary supplements and vitamins are synthetic. You just mentioned the situation where you have various forms of estriol, estrogen type products. So that's another reason why people might think, oh, well, I can just eat healthy. I don't need supplements. Maybe I don't even want supplements because supplements are probably synthetic and I just want to get everything naturally through the food I eat. But we're not just talking. You explained how the CBD issue could end up impacting, who knows, it could impact hemp oil. It could impact even hemp hearts if they enforced it a certain way. Yeah, what is your, you've explained that you don't represent the industry. So from a consumer perspective, what do you say to this misconception about what supplements are?
Well, I say that I wouldn't take any supplements if I could get it all through food either. I think that food is best. That is ideal. And maybe 100 years ago, and if we didn't have all the chemical exposures and toxicants bombarding us all of the time, and if the soil was still rich in biodiversity and nutrient dense with minerals, then our food would be healthier. That's not the case. You'd have to eat 8 oranges today to get the same amount of vitamin C that you would get from 1 orange that my grandma would eat. So, and I can't, my blood sugar couldn't handle 8 oranges. I'd be like, whoa. And there's all of the other vitamins and nutrients we need too, right? So I think it's an impossibility to get the nutrients that we need from our food alone. And then again, because you have these different assaults that we encounter, and it's not just environmental, it's also the environments we create with high stress, and that can cause cardiac related issues that you would benefit from really high doses of magnesium. I think a majority of the population is deficient in magnesium, and it's one of the most critical nutrients out there. So I think bottom line also, again, I'm going to say health freedom. So even if one could get all the nutrients they need from the food, and I'm going to say that they can't, because I've tried really hard, and I even track it with a chronometer, and it's like no matter what I do, I'm not even hitting all, like I can't get enough vitamin E, and it's like no matter what I do, I can't seem to get enough. But also bio individuality, people need different amounts and different forms and different life situations. But also, not everybody can afford to buy all of that organic produce and eat 10 or 12 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And organic, grass fed, high quality meats and eggs. And not everybody has the education or the time to track that. I think, again, health freedom, people should have just the right. We're not talking about asking anybody to do anything they don't want to do. We're just trying to make things available for those that want to opt for a multivitamin and have high enough doses of magnesium and vitamin D so they can sleep well and stay healthy during the flu season.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Looking now at comments that are coming over the Rockfin channel, Richard says, "This sickens me. Like you, I am now a victim. The FTC is now hunting me for selling a nutraceutical product that has been deemed safe for over 20 years, and it is safe. I am only a very small business, not the factory, and the legal fees are breaking me. I don't know what I will do when they find me." So is this typical in the space right now for people working with supplements?
Absolutely.
Oh,
And we saw this really especially prominent. So this has always been the case. This has always been the case. But it was especially prominent and more obvious during COVID because you had medical doctors wanting to share their protocols for staying healthy on their websites or in other public realms. And you have FTs coming down and saying, censoring the medical doctors. You can't talk about these things. So I don't know Richard's story. I don't know what he's selling, and I don't know whether or not he made, a claim. So immunity promotes immunity as a structure function claim. Obviously, right? It talks about the structure and function of the body, immunity. Well, during COVID, FDA said anything that talks about immunity was an implied disease claim that it actually treats or prevents COVID. So they're going against Congress and they're reinterpreting what Congress meant by structure function claims. So that could have been something that impacted Richard. I don't know what his story is again, but we're seeing this left and right, and it's just eliminating all access to truth, to good information that can actually help sick people or people at risk for chronic disease and illness.
yeah, it's terrible. Well, we have 5 more minutes. I'm not seeing any questions that we haven't answered from the chat, but Corey, let me know if I missed anything. Gretchen, what are your final thoughts on this? Here's your last chance to make a pitch for people to take action.
I would just say that we're all busy, me included. Everybody's busy. We've all got kids and their schedules and our jobs, and we've all got to make dinner at the end of the day. Life is busy, and it's easy to just think that somebody else is going to step in and take care of this, or that these problems will go away, or that it can't be real because it just doesn't seem logical. This couldn't happen because this is the United States. It's the land of the free and home of the brave. Like, I think it's easier just to ignore this and other similar, political issues that impact our freedom. But unless we actually pay attention, get involved, we will lose these freedom. It's happening. It's happened in the rest of the world. It's happened in Europe, and it is. They are trying to make it happen here too, and it's not us being sensationalist sky is falling. I mean, we're being legitimately honest when we say it's an urgent alert. There's, again, because they're still trying. They may never go away. And we have to always hold them at bay if we want to continue to have access to these freedoms. I mean, I think that it's up to every individual to be accountable, to take care of ourselves and our families. We have to be educated and we have to be able to access that information we need. We have to be able to access the products that we need in order to stay healthy. So no one's going to do it for us. So I encourage everyone to go to savesupplements.com and take action. And then, yeah, call their members of Congress as well. And we'll do another alert that will provide phone numbers and access to do that avenue as well. And to continue to send alerts and to continue to stay involved and our newsletter, follow what's going on and be educated and bring in your friends and family and others, educate too, and get them involved as well. It starts with the community.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, of all the controversies that have bubbled up over the last 2 years, this really isn't controversial at all. I want to read one last comment from the chat because I think it sums it all up. Dale says, I am very sensitive to so many pharmaceuticals, and in order to save my life, I had to rely on supplements, herbs, and homeopathic remedies. And this is also, I think this is an easy way to talk to friends and loved ones about the health challenges that we've faced over the last 2 years. You know, whether you're, somebody who has taken a pharmaceutical product and is now having trouble related to that. I don't want to get into any thorny issues, but things like NAC, vitamin D, vitamin C, like we can talk to our friends and families about good health and in a non-controversial way. It's like I think everybody wants a healthy immune system. Everybody wants good health, and we're all in this together. And I think this is something that everybody can agree on, no matter how you responded to the events of the last few years.
I think that's true. And I would also add to, ask questions, delve deeper. Don't believe necessarily everything you read. Does it pass the common sense test? One other thing I'll just mention, you noted NAC. FDA did come out and attempt to start the process of banning NAC. And that was because there are 17 different random controlled trials underway, a majority of them looking at using NAC to treat COVID. So we've got the government telling us you can't tell people that NAC treats COVID. We've also got them during COVID trying to ban what people are using to stay healthy so that drug companies can study it and potentially turn it into a COVID drug. So you have to dig deeper and to ask questions. Why? If it doesn't pass the common sense test, you have to ask why and who are the entities that would benefit from this. You have to dig deeper, look at the special interests. So in my world, that's generally big pharma, big food, big chemical companies too. But today we're talking about big pharma.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to encourage everyone to go to the Alliance for Natural Health and sign up for their free e-newsletter and check out the latest news. I just was searching for stuff about this issue, but I was like, oh, whoa, statins related to diabetes. Like, you have so much good stuff on your website, and everybody needs to check it out and make sure they're connected to the Alliance for Natural Health to stay informed.
Yes, and it's anh-usa.org. Please come to our website, check out. It's a wealth of information, and hopefully we can help educate and provide just what you need.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gretchen. It has been such a pleasure and so informative. Thank you. I finally feel like I get it now. Thanks so much for explaining all these issues.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to see you.
Great to see you too. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye, everyone.